So we're going to put in the quote about the papaya. So I recommend for body paragraphs that you have at least 3 quotes. So each body paragraph should have at least 3 quotes. If you can get more than that, I challenge you to do so. I know some of you are not fond of essay writing, but you also all have done a really good job throughout this book of looking at the quotes and the language and putting things on your note taker. So I know writing more is not your first choice, but many of you are very capable of doing it, and it's a good way to practice and get comfortable with essay writing. So my quick little spiel on essay writing is nobody loves to write an essay, right? People that might like to write more than others, but essay writing is just like anything else you need to do, like a sport or an instrument or even a craft of some sort or any other subject. You do need to practice it and build your stamina to do so. So you're not just going to go out and be able to be an all-star at whatever sport it is you love or go outside and want to run 5 miles. You got to start small. So that's why we're going to practice building up our writing stamina, which means you do need to be in class doing it as we go along, because that will help you whether you realize it or not. It does take that practice. Okay, so we're going to put in our last quote for today, or at least for this paragraph. And before we put in the quote, what are we going to need to do? We can't just drop it in. What do we need to give our readers? What's involved in the E part of A-N-E-S-C? What does E stand for?
Explain it.
Explain it. So we got to explain the quote a little bit, give some background information. So let's think about this whole papaya tree. Let me pull up our organizer. If you want to have it open too, you can. I think we wrote it down. Yeah. So what's going on? Where is she when she's having this papaya for the first time? Is she in Vietnam? Is she in America? What did we say for our background information over here? Where is she when she tries this type of dried papaya? Look at this little box on my screen. Where does it say she is? What was the background information we gave?
America.
In America, good. So let's make note of that still so our readers know and don't, get confused. So while in America, Ha also tries, or also, let's say, also has the American version of papaya for the first time. So EJ, just copy down where we're starting right now, which is down here at the bottom. Same with you, Danielle. If you didn't get anything written yesterday or you weren't here yesterday, just start where we are now and then we can fill in the rest later. So while in America, Ha also has the American version of papaya for the first time.
Wait, so Miss Sasha, write that down?
Yep. So you're going to write everything I'm writing down right now. So stay with us and just follow along and keep writing as we go, because we're doing the first paragraph together.
Okay, so can I take a picture just in case if I'm not done?
Yeah, you can take a picture of it, but keep track of, we're starting down here at the bottom right now. So if you just want to pick up from where we started, then you can do the rest of it later.
So not only from the top?
No, yeah, start right here where it says while.
Oh, wait a minute. So I open up the IOABA, and what do I open?
And it should be blank because you're writing in it. It's your draft. So you missed yesterday, so you weren't here for all of this up here.
Okay,
so
I'm back in business, miss.
Hold on
what are we
one second. So
reading?
EJ, hold on. So EJ, you'll have to fill this in later, but just start for now at the bottom. So if you didn't do it yesterday, don't start from the top right now. Start from where we are, where it says E.
F parenthesis period.
What's up, David?
Oh, never mind.
Okay. So then what we talked about yesterday is what do we want to do with our quote instead of saying things like the author says or in the text? What do we want to try and do? Who remembers? What do we want to try and do? Do we want to say those things like in the text, the author says?
No, that's too
basic, too elementary, right? What could we just do instead? What do we want to at least try to do?
You have to at least try to use 8th grade grammar. That's all we can use is 8th grade grammar, miss.
8th grade language, and let's try and fit it right into this sentence. Why waste time, writing, especially for the few of you who are like, oh, I don't like this. Let's not make it harder for ourselves. Let's fit it right into this sentence as opposed to, add in those extra, repetitive phrases. So I'm going to say, while in America, Ha also has the American version of papaya for the first time. And much to her dismay.
In America. Am I unmuted? Can you hear everything I'm saying?
Yes, you are. And much to her dismay, and this is where we can now put the quote right into the sentence, the part we had on our organizer. It is chewy, sugary, waxy, sticky, not the same at all. Typing is off now because I've been doing it all day. So while in America, Ha also has the American version.
They could have just went to a Puerto Rican restaurant and got some papaya, but
for the first time, and much to her dismay, it is chewy, sugary, waxy, sticky, not the same at all. Now our quote has been embedded right into our background knowledge. We didn't waste time with those repetitive phrases like the text says. Don't use those. Stay away from them. Too boring. And I know I'm going to give people a minute to catch up, but I know on our organizer, we decided to do a zoom in on this one because in this case, we've been given like a list of details, a list of words right here. So we probably should do the zoom in. We're looking specifically at the author's diction, at the word choices, because we have a whole list of words right here, whole list of adjectives. So we'll put a ZI for zoom in, where we're looking specifically at the word choice. What do these words tell us? What does this diction tell us? I'm going to say this diction not represents, but emphasizes what? Oops. What's the point of these words? Chewy, sugary, waxy, sticky. What is the point that the author and Ha is trying to get across? The one we've been talking about in this paragraph.
The different foods.
What about in this case? What specifically?
The difference between the papayas.
Good. So the diction emphasizes the difference between this papaya, or we can say, yeah, between the two different versions of papaya. And then we can pick a word or two to actually look at. So you could really pick any of those, right? Because they're all talking about what's different. So sugary, and I know I kind of go quickly a little bit sometimes and keep typing. So just follow along, and then I'm going to pause again at the end of this sentence to just give everyone a chance to catch up. So don't give up, just keep going, and I'm not going to push, further. I'll pause after this sentence. So the words I'm going to say here, sugary, and let's maybe just look at chewy.
Oh, goodness gracious.
What?
I just saw the censored thing, miss. It had
The
blurred.
what?
It had a blurred square there where you were typing.
Why?
I don't know.
I don't know why that would be.
Literally,
So
I'm looking
sugary
directly at your screen. It was a blurred square. I'm like,
and chewy show that. Why is this papaya different? Yes, we know that the words that are being used to describe, but what is different about this one versus the one in Vietnam? Someone else tell me. Where's the one in Vietnam coming from? Daniela, where does Ha get her papaya in Vietnam? She go to the grocery store and get it, or where is it coming from? Do you remember?
From their own farm, I think.
Yeah, she's growing it actually outside on it comes off of a tree. So similar to like kind of like a coconut and off a palm tree, this is coming off like a similar kind of looking tree. If you remember the cover of the book that I have here for you, it's coming off a papaya tree. So you're right, she's growing it. They're growing it themselves. So sugary and chewy show that the dried papaya has a different.
Your screen is blurred out. Oh, never mind.
Is it?
It
I don't know
was.
why.
Not anymore.
Is it okay now? That has happened a few times today, so just let me know because it doesn't show me that on my end. Just call out if that happens. And I'm going to see if I can find a different word for different. Dissimilar, that works. Because we're using, if you look up above, we've used different now 3 times in the last sentence. So I'm going to try and put a different word in there.
That's too many times.
Too many times. So hit my synonyms. I don't want to say unique because that makes it sound like it's good. I'm going to use dissimilar. Compared to, and I know this is probably rooted in your minds by now, this word, to the fresh and ripe papaya, she would, or we'd say, picked from her tree back home. Oh, back in Vietnam, I guess we should specify. So sugary and chewy show that the dried papaya has a dissimilar taste compared to the fresh and ripe papaya picked from her tree back home. So let's pause there for a minute. Please don't be overwhelmed if you didn't do this yesterday, you weren't here. Just pick up where we left off. So right now we should have this part down here written. And I'll pause for a minute to make sure that's the case. EJ, did you get this down? EJ.
Yeah, hi, miss.
Are you writing this down as we go?
Of course.
I'm taking that as a no. So it's okay to take a picture of the other stuff and do it later, but I don't want you to just sit here and do nothing. You got to write down what we're doing now. So this last part here, just pick up even where it says ZI.
Miss, look at my screen.
Yes.
I did write it down.
Okay. As long as you're writing it, that's fine. Because I want you, especially since you're new this year to our school, a lot of kids practiced this format last year, and that's why I want to make sure you're hearing it and getting it written down so it can help you when you have to do some on your own.
Hey, that, miss. Bye bye.
Well, I was supposed to practice it, but instead of practicing it, I played Roblox during essay writing.
Lovely. So we zoomed in, which means like we've practiced, we've been looking specifically at the word choice. It's up to you if you want to do a zoom in or a zoom out. I would never, mark you for not doing one or the other. But in this case, if you notice, like I said, we were given specific details like chewy, sugary, waxy. Those words automatically kind of told me I should look at why the author used those. Because the author could have just said the papaya tastes bad, right? But instead she put those description, those details in there to, you know, tell us or to show us instead. We're going to add in 2 more lines, one more for the zoom in and then our conclusion or our clincher. And then we're done with paragraph 1, which is a big thing to have out of the way. So you guys are doing a good job. We have 2 more sentences we're going to write. So the next thing I want to talk about is a word I think you've probably heard me use before, but we might not have had as much practice writing about it or really getting into detail about it. So we have these 2 words. You don't write them down. You don't have to write them down yet. Denotation and connotation. And I know we talked about them in intervention if you're with me, and I've mentioned them in here before. But when you're doing a zoom in, these are good words to think about and to use. So a denotation, and think of the first letter D, is the dictionary definition of a word, right? So for instance, the example we talked about in class was house and home. So house and home have the same dictionary definition, the same denotation. However, connotation is the almost emotional meaning behind a word, the emotion that a word might invoke or bring out in you. So what is the emotion behind a word, the feeling? So house and home, we said, yes, they have 2 different meanings or 2 different definitions, but they also have 2 different kind of representation or emotional meanings behind them. A house is a little bit different to us than a home.
Screen blurred.
That's okay. I'm not writing anything right now. Okay, so we're going to talk about this word connotation in our last sentence here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, so connotation is the emotion or the feeling behind a word. What do you think of these words up here? Are these like necessarily bad words? Like dark, evil words?
I mean, no, not really.
No, not really at all, right? Sugary would sometimes be something we think of as a good thing if we like candy and soda and stuff like that.
Exactly.
However,
I love
in this
candy.
situation, are these words negatively being used or positively being used? In this situation, in this sentence, are they negative or positive?
Negative.
Yeah. So in this case, they do have a negative connotation, a negative emotional meaning behind them. They're not necessarily bad words or evil words like death and darkness, but we do have these negative emotion behind them. So we can drop that in there as another way to kind of glam up our writing here. So the diction used has or holds, let's say holds a negative connotation as they demonstrate in this case, they are demonstrating the change in food, but the papaya, think about it too, that was such a big part of Ha's life at home. She loved that tree. She took care of it. She grew them. So this diction holds a negative connotation as it demonstrates or as they demonstrate the loss of both her home and the foods. We'll say the loss of Ha's home. Probably should specify that. Ha's home and the foods she enjoys. Let's make sure that makes sense. The diction used holds a negative connotation as holds holds negative connotation, a negative connotation as it demonstrates. There we go. I just changed that word around. The diction used holds a negative connotation as it demonstrates the loss of both Ha's home and the foods she enjoys. Right, we're seeing here that it's not just about not having the food she loves and the papaya she loves, but also reflecting on all she kind of had to leave at home. One more little sentence, but I'll pause for a minute.
I love how we have a whole paragraph about food. Right?
Look at how much you guys have written too. Almost 300 words for one paragraph. But we actually did it in like basically a class period. If we took away some of the talking and the stuff that happens at the beginning, you could have done this in one class period with the focus and the effort.
I have way less than 100. I think I have less than 100 words on mine.
Why is that?
Never mind, I have more than 100.
Okay, I was gonna say. Everyone should have close to around what we have up here, unless you were absent yesterday and have to add it in.
I mean, I have all the stuff from Mr. Van Zant's class plus the stuff we did today. I don't think that's over 300 words.
It should tell you right down in the left-hand corner, unless it's different because I'm on Word.
258 words.
Yeah, seems about right. You'll notice too is I'm not putting in a quote and then saying one thing about it and moving on. And that's the big thing a lot of us do is we put in a quote like chewy, sugary, waxy, sticky. This shows that the papaya is bad, that she doesn't like it. Then we move on. Right? But the picks for I really don't care. If you want to include 3 quotes and that's it, that's fine. But you really need to spend at least 2 to 3 sentences talking about the quote. And that's what the zoom in and the zoom out is for, because it tells you specifically what to talk about, right? You don't have to restate anything. You don't have to talk to me about the summary of the book. You need to either be looking at the bigger meaning or the literary devices or zooming in on the word choice and connecting that back to your argument. What's the conclusion for the clincher? It's our last sentence. What's the point of this? Why do we have this in an essay? What do we do here?
Because, like, you need to close up the paragraph.
Yeah, and how do we do that? What do we need to mention?
You need to mention, like, basically the stuff we mentioned at the beginning of the paragraph.
Good. So the conclusion is a little bit like the first sentence reworded, rephrased. So definitely, like, I'm glad you said that, David. Think up to what we said in our first line here. The conclusion should be a wrap up of what you were trying to argue. You shouldn't be talking about any new information here, right? It's just a 1-sentence statement that kind of says your point one more time, just in a different way. So it is a little bit silly, but it's a nice way to kind of tie everything all together and show your readers one more time your main point. We also want to keep our main argument in mind as well, because yes, we've talked all about Ha in here because that's the resource we're using, but we also want to think about the bigger question that was asked, which was about the universal refugee experience. So let's bring that up again, right? That way we can connect back to our main argument. So when refugees are forced to flee and find new homes, what do they have to do? How can we wrap this up? What do they have to sacrifice? Have we been talking about? They must what?
They must
change
sacrifice.
The way they eat.
Love it. I'm going to put both things I heard. They must sacrifice their culture and change the way they eat. Beautiful.
Culture.
Or change what they eat.
I don't know how to spell.
Change their eating habits. Whatever you want to put in there, you can make it your own, right? But we're summing it up one more time, connecting it back to our bigger argument about all refugees, which is when they're forced to flee and find a new home, here's the challenge they faced. This is not the time for me to talk about another challenge. Don't talk about the other things. Save those for your body paragraphs, your other body paragraphs, right? Keep everything focused to that one topic for this paragraph.
I love how class is like 4 minutes ahead.
I'm just gonna stop recording this.